Hi, all my beautiful people. Happy Monday. So the other day I was going through some turmoil, some emotional. I was in a moment of crisis, y'all. I was in crisis. And just things just kept on going left, left, left. And I kept on wondering what is going on. And I was praying and I'm asking God, please, Lord, show me, talk to me, tell me why is it that this is happening in my life right now. Explain this to me because it's a lot, right? And so it was interesting because on that Sunday, I didn't actually end up going to church, but I decided to, go for an online service at Community of Faith. And the pastor Mark and his wife actually were talking about what is called the attachment theory, and it tripped me out because I was like, "Whoa, that's I love it when I ask God to speak to me, and He just like, here is what you were asking for." So I was so grateful because it was very, again. So guys, the attachment theory basically states that the behavior of the primary caregivers, that could be your parents, could be your guardians, just your primary caregivers, um, how it contributes and forms the way a child perceives close relationships, and this translates into like your adult relationships of how you perceive love, how you receive love, how you translate love. If the child's physical and emotional needs are satisfied, he or she becomes securely attached. If there is misattunement in the part of the parent or the caregiver, then that leads to insecure attachment. So basically, the two questions that the pastor asked were, number one, how did your caregivers deal with you in times of crisis? Like, how did they react to you? How did they, comfort you, soothe you, support you? How did that go when you were in a moment of crisis as a child? How did they react to you? And the number two question was, how do your family react in times of crisis? I was like, whoa, okay, okay, okay. And the things that came to me were pretty shocking. So, when I was about 2, 3 years old, I, as any, infant, I was having issues eating, and I was taking forever eating. In what I guess was supposed to be punishment, the person who was punishing me for not eating ended up breaking my hand, like literally breaking my hand. And it was crazy because all I remember was like blacking out, and then like the next thing what I do remember is waking up and blacking out, and next thing was my grandma like driving right through the gate because of how loudly I screamed. And my grandfather like tripping out because he wasn't even in the country when that happened. And it was just crazy, that something as simple as not eating was dealt with me ending up in the hospital. It was crazy. Um and and it was just wild because if you can imagine that being the way to deal with something like as simple as eating, can you imagine in the moments that when I had actually done something wrong, And yeah, another moment is like when I was about 11, I broke my arm. I was playing with a friend or whatever, and I tripped and I fell on my arm, and then I had a hairline fracture. So I am terrified. I'm terrified because I know that when I go home, I'm going to be in trouble. I'm probably going to end up getting my ass whooped because of the fact that my arm is broken. I was terrified to go home because I know, oh my God, this is more trouble than I already in. I'm in crisis, but what I was scared of is more my father's reaction than the fact that my actual arm is broken. It was crazy. And when I got home, he was yelling at me and shouting at me, telling me, how this was going to inconvenience him and how he had to go to work and how all these things. And but the thing that I am thankful for is that I did have caregivers that like hurt me and broke me, but I also did have caregivers that loved me You know what I mean? While I did have my dad on this side who was just like, he just wrath. The one thing, the way that I can describe how some of my caregivers dealt with me in moments of crisis, or in just, moments of just being a child, was wrath. I remember once not doing my homework, and I was beaten so badly that I couldn't sit down for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Can you imagine, for not finishing my homework? Like, no wonder I have an issue with school. It's crazy. And it's surprising that I don't even have an issue with food, because that's how my arm got broken. But I still have, I still have my grandma, my aunts, people who soothed me and loved on me. And it's I'm thankful, because if it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't have survived. You know what I mean? And yeah, how do my family deal with moments of crisis? For some people don't deal with it. Some of our families, they kind of just like sweep things under the rug and they move on. I have had moments when I was in crisis, and I had, people make up rumors about me, and it was crazy, because I was genuinely in crisis, and instead of, people reaching out to me and trying to help me in that time of crisis, their way of, I think, dealing with the situation was to make up things about me, and that was like really horrible. So the thing about that is, growing up, like, now that I'm an adult, there's some things that I will not condone, I will not allow, because of the fact that some things, like, they take you right back. You know what I mean? And that's the point. This is what attachment theory is about, is that, the pastor was talking about that ultimately we're all just children who want to be loved. And sometimes we react like children, and we're reacting to things that you're probably reacting to someone. It's not something, you're not reacting to them, you're reacting to something that happened to you in your childhood. You know what I mean? Sometimes, you like, people will say that you've changed. Like, for me, somebody told me that I've changed, but yes, I have changed, because I remember when I was a little child, a little girl, who used to get my arms and feet tied up and be put in a bucket of cold water and put in a closet as punishment. Like, it's crazy. I used to read a book called A Child Called It. And I never understood it. It's sorry. It's because I related to this kid, because this child was tortured by their caregiver. And I used to read books like, Push by Precious. I mean, about the story of Precious, if you guys have watched that movie. And I never really thought about, why do I feel such a connection with, like, the children at Mary Faith, the children that I help out, all those kids are children who've survived abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. And it wasn't until now that I get it. Like, sometimes when I look at those children and I look at what they've been through, and I know what it's like to go through that and not be able to speak out, and not be able not be able to express yourself. So I am thankful, because I survived those things. I am a survivor. When I say these things, that I am a survivor, and it's crazy that how not dealing with things will just make some things come up later in the surface. And I am grateful for this season, that I am actually able to, sit down and identify these things, and identify, and like, be able to, like, feel bad for little me, and appreciate why is it that I've struggled a lot with life later, because these things they're part of who you are, no matter how much you try to run away from them. Yeah, and it's crazy, because I do know these people, the people other than my father, but I do know, these people who hurt me, emotionally, who hurt me physically, who hurt me. And I'll see other people who will, make judgment of me, and they don't know my life. They don't know what I've been through, but they just make assumptions and they talk about me and they say all these things. But at the end of the day, I know who I am, and I know what I have to live with. I know, the skeletons that are in my closet. But at the end of the day, I am finding ways to live with them. And I am making sure that for sure I am not passing on any traumas to my children because of what was done to me. So yeah, guys, I really encourage you guys to read on the attachment theory and learn where you stand on the attachment theory. You know what I mean? So when you remember, guys, that when you love on your children, when you give them, when you comfort them and you support them, you know what I mean? There's one thing that my uncle always does with Nathan, and I think is like the most beautiful thing, is that every time when he messes up, he always tells him that I love you no matter what. Nathan, I love you no matter what. No matter what you do. And I think it's beautiful. I can't say that I grew up in that environment, but I think it's beautiful to see, just how different parents these days are. And I know it hurts my mom, to see some of these things, like when I say these things, because she was so far from me. And, but it's my life and it's my story. And I said, I'm gonna share it with y'all. Maybe I'll write a book one day. Yeah, so guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for letting me cry. And yeah, keep it locked.